Joining us right now is the governor of Wisconsin, Scott Walker, Republican, and a man that many think could be the next president of the United States. Governor Walker, thanks for joining us this morning.
Hey, good morning. Good to be with you. Happy Thanksgiving in advance.
And to you as well. Now, I'm not going to embarrass you or waste time by asking you if you're going to run for president, because my hunch is that when you decide you're going to run for president, it's going to be some sort of big announcement, and you're not going to do it on a Washington, D.C. local talk show. So instead, let me ask you this. You recently said, I think to George Stephanopoulos, that you believe that the next president should come from a state, should be an executive, a governor. Tell me what being governor, what that skill set brings to the table in terms of occupying the White House, and compare that to what we've got right now, which is Barack Obama, who was a senator just for a couple of years before he became president. What would being a governor have done to help Barack Obama?
Well, I think in the latter point, we see increasingly with Obamacare and even some of the foreign policy that this is a White House where the political shop seems to be driving everything, and without any regard to the policy side of the equation to see if they could actually do things. I think that's self-evident in not only in the rollout, but many of the problems we see in Obamacare. And the difference, and before I was governor, for example, I was the elected county executive in Milwaukee County, and there is a distinction. There is something where, unlike the legislative branch, for which I have a lot of respect for people who are lawmakers, the reality is when it's a mayor, a county executive, a governor, or eventually someone's the president, there's executive decisions you have to make. You have to have a cabinet. You propose a budget. You have to do things across the board, and you ultimately have to be held accountable for everything you do, not just for a vote here or there or a speech here or there, but everything you do. And it's why historically, up until Barack Obama, the last time we elected a member of Congress was 1960, and before that, it was some 40 years even before.
Yeah.
So historically, we've typically elected presidents, vice presidents, and governors as our presidents, not members of Congress.
Governor Scott Walker of Wisconsin's our guest. He's a Republican, and he's also the author of a brand new book called Unintimidated, A Governor's Story and a Nation's Challenge. By the way, that whole releasing a book thing, that's another thing the presidential candidates do. But I don't want to dwell on that.
Yeah, we don't want to dwell on that. Let me ask you this.
Guys, you'd be surprised to know that most people who put books out for reasons like that do so. As George Will said the other day to me, he said, I read your book, and I got to tell you, I was pleasantly surprised. It's really quite good. And I said, thanks, I think. And what he said he meant was usually those books, the typical candidate book is insufferable. It's all about how great the candidate is and how wonderful, and it's a biography. In this case, if you want to know how I became an Eagle Scout as a kid, you're going to be sorely disappointed, because this book is really about the reforms in Wisconsin, what we did, how we did it, most importantly, why we did it, and how it could apply elsewhere.
Well, the formula that you have employed in Wisconsin has been to stay on the economic message. You believe that is the way to go, and yet you seem to shy away, or it's not a prominent part of your formula to talk about social issues. Why is that?
Well, when I was elected in my state, like probably most states around the country, we were facing a real economic and fiscal crisis. And when I went out and conducted a job interview with the people who were going to hire me, the voters of the state, I said, here's the two crises that are prominent in people's minds. Here's what I'm going to do to fix it. And then since day one, that's really what I've been focused in like a laser beam. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't other issues. I'm a social conservative. I'm pro-life. I mentioned later in the book that there are a number of measures that we did that deal with everything from the life issue to protecting the Second Amendment firearm rights for legal citizens to other things on down the line. There's a long litany of conservative things I've done that go beyond our economic and fiscal agenda. But my focus is really on the things that people hired me to do, and that's to help fix the economy and help get our budget on track.
But if you're going to run for national office, you're going to have to lay out your positions on these things, and there are many parts of the country where there are Tea Party groups and other social conservatives who are going to want you to be strong about this. Is that something that you feel comfortable doing?
Oh, and I've done for years. I mean, on all those issues, the chapter I have in the book is called Hey, We Did That Too, which is because we're so well known for all the attention that we got because of the protests and all the grief that we got that we mentioned in the book, that people don't know all the different things we did. I mean, for example, we took funding away from Planned Parenthood and put it into less controversial groups like our local county governments to provide women's health care. Most people don't know about that. I signed into law concealed carry and the castle doctrine legislation that protects even further Second Amendment rights in the state of Wisconsin. I signed one of the most comprehensive voter ID laws in the country. All those things were important. They're just not the things that I focus in and day out. But I don't think anyone would in any way be, even on Obamacare, I campaigned against it in 10, campaigned against it in 12, empowered my attorney general to join the lawsuit the very first day I took office, did not take the the state exchange and didn't take the federal Medicaid dollars. All those things I think people would be perfectly comfortable with. And they will be as I run for re-election next year, I assume.
Governor Scott Walker is our guest. And Governor Walker, your friend and colleague Paul Ryan, of course, from Wisconsin in the House of Representatives, he was on the ticket this last time around for presidency, of course, of the vice presidential nominee. And many thought he's so popular in Wisconsin, he'll be able to carry Wisconsin for the Romney-Ryan ticket. That didn't work out. Can a Republican win Wisconsin in the presidential race, and how?
Sure. It'll be tough because the last time we did it was with President Reagan in 1984, but it really was it little or nothing to do with Paul being on the ticket and everything to do with I saw as a failure not just in Wisconsin but across the country in battleground states of the Romney camp. I mentioned a whole chapter near the end of my book, Unintimidated, that Mitt Romney could have won Wisconsin, could have won other battleground states.
Well, can you shed some light on that? Because we were told, I remember specifically talking to Reince Priebus, chairman of the Republican Party, also from Wisconsin. He said, we've got this infrastructure and ground game in Wisconsin that we just used during Scott Walker's recall, and the Romney camp is going to use that infrastructure and ground game and win the state. What happened?
Yeah, we turned it right over to him. We had made 4.5 million voter contacts in 6 months. We did all the things in our campaign that people highlight about the Obama campaign and electronic media, new media, and all that. The difference was Romney to win a state like Wisconsin, and I think most of the other battleground states, had to show that the R next to his name didn't just stand for Republican, it stood for reformer. In his case, for whatever reason, poor advice from the national camp, but they kept telling him, you don't have to lay out a reform agenda. You don't have to put the details out. Just keep the focus on Barack Obama. There'll be a referendum on the president, and we'll win. And unfortunately, that left such a void that in my state and other battleground states, the Obama camp basically defined Romney as saying the R next to his name stands for rich guy, only cares about rich guys. And
Yeah.
we never had a counter to that. And in the book, one of the other things I point out is that, they mistakenly misread the 1980 campaign as just being about the simple question, are you better off today than you were 4 years ago, not realizing that Reagan's argument, that was really his closing argument in the last debate, wasn't his entire argument for why he should be elected, and they never made the same sort of argument that President Reagan made to the American people.
Hey, Governor Walker, we know you're on a tight schedule with your book. Can you stay with us just for another minute and a half for another question? Okay, we just got to go to traffic real fast. All right, Scott Walker, governor of Wisconsin, joins us in just a moment. You know how these things go when you're on a book tour, and apparently Governor Scott Walker did have to jump. The governor thought he could stay, but there's always a guy right next to him that says, no, you've got another interview. So thank you, Governor Scott Walker, for joining us.
Well, we want to talk about we had some other things on the schedule anyway, but thank you, Governor, for joining us. Greatly appreciate it.